Hello everyone, welcome to GGN. Today is Monday, August 20th, 2012, and I'm Darko. I'm going to cover the economy in this first video along with some other stuff. Interesting news, definitely. Jim Rogers, it's going to get really bad after the next election. It says in a riveting new interview on CNBC, the legendary investor Jim Rogers has warned Americans to prepare for a financial Armageddon, which we've heard this many times before. I have my doubts of it, but he says he fully expects the economy to implode after the U.S. election. So he says here Rogers has been an outspoken critic of the Fed's policies of quantitative easing, saying the world is drowning in too much debt. He puts the blame squarely on the U.S. and European governments for abusing their license to print money. In the U.S. alone, the national debt has surged to nearly $16 trillion. That's more than $50,000 for every American man, woman, and child. They need to stop spending money they don't have, Rogers said. The solution to too much debt is not more debt. What would make me very excited is if a few people, i.e. the government, went bankrupt, Rogers added. It's going to be bad after the next election, he says. In a newly released documentary that went viral last month, a team of influential economic experts say they have discovered a frightening pattern they believe points to a massive economic catastrophe unlike anything ever seen in the history of the world. So here's a good website, shithitthefanplan.com. Report says Soros unloads all investments in major financial stocks, invests over $130 million in gold. So in a harbinger of what may be coming our way in fall of 2012, billionaire financier George Soros has sold all of his equity positions in major financial stocks, according to a 13F report filed with the Securities Exchange Commission for the quarter ending June 30th, 2012. When a major global player with direct ties to the White House, Wall Street, and the banking system starts offloading stocks and starts stacking gold, it suggests a very serious market move is set to happen. While often lambasted for his calls to centralize global banking, increase government intervention in the economy, and his support of what he has called an emergence of the New World Order, if there's anyone with an inside track of where things are headed next, it's Soros. And another individual, Lord Rothschild, takes 130 million bet against the euro. So Rothschild has taken a near 130 million bet against the euro as fears continue to grow the single currency will break up. So many of you already know the history of him and the war with France and England and how he profited off of it. So don't need to go into it. You can go look it up. 10 most profitable U.S. companies paid 9% in federal income taxes. Largest corporations in the U.S. consisting of oil, retail, banking, and technology giants paid an average of only 9% of their earnings in income taxes to the IRS last year. So according to tax code, companies are supposed to pay 35% income tax. So, yeah, I just recently I was in a town, and it was like a beautiful day out. They weren't spraying as much, which is nice. And I saw it was a Saturday, so a lot of people were out doing their garage sales. And I noticed, a cop at one of them when I was leaving the town. I was in a cop car right on the main route leaving town. I'm like, wow, okay, it's kind of a weird place to park. But then I noticed there's a garage sale there, and I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I've had, my last time I got pulled over, like I mentioned, it was in that town. There's something about that town. They have a street called Pike Street, so i.e. Albert Pike. I don't know, but. There's nothing worse than these people that are like middle lower class, right? They're not poor, they're not middle upper class, they're not upper class, and they're trying to make ends meet. And so these little garage sales actually help them pay their bills. And so these asshole cops come and they fuck with them for codes and code violations and stuff like that. And it's so ridiculous because we see how the system works. If you are lower middle class, you pay into all of this system, and you don't really get much back. It's made for the poor and it's made for the rich, for the corporations who don't pay anything into it. So they really do get the short end of the stick when it comes to that. So we were just talking about George Soros and the printing of money. Chance of Fed printing more money jumps to 60%. So it says here, 60% chance to launch a third round of money printing. So an individual that is a viewer of GGN leaves comments once in a while, Chotaboy66, and he's got a pretty insightful take on the Federal Reserve System, on money printing and what it is and the laundering of money. So I'll go ahead and read it, and then we'll continue here. Money is siphoned off by every bank on the face of this planet who steals and launders the money we create by issuing a promissory note before any book entry. Banks put up or give up basically jack of their own. The Federal Reserve can't publish any money unless one of us issues a promissory note first when we allegedly borrow money. All local banks launder the money via the Federal Reserve System, the central bank, and the same money is loaned back as a irreversible multiplication of national debt, which keeps the cycles of consolidation going until we lose the lot. There is no loan, but there is a debt to pay the true creditor who actually gives up property and retires that money. However, we have banks who pretend to loan us money when they're really loaning us our own contracts back to us and charging us interest for the privilege of being robbed, interest that causes a irreversible multiplication of debt. My website is ggnonline.com, and on YouTube my channels are ddarko 2012 and 2013. I have a poll up here. Do you believe the recent media attention on the feminist riots, the ban, riot, jail sentence, and the protest of the Russian embassy in London was a Western strategy to demonize and destabilize Russia? So far, 61% are saying yes, followed by 23% saying no, and 15% saying maybe. So you can put your email address to follow us there, and also I'd like to thank the people who have donated to me recently. It's very much appreciated. So some signs of the times: cows eating candy during the drought. So ranchers have struggled with skyrocketing corn prices because the drought has made feeding their livestock very expensive, but one rancher has turned to a very sweet solution. So it goes on here, so just to be able to survive, we have to look for other sources of nutrition, so they're no longer feeding off corn. And they began to buy second-hand candy. And it's too bad, because some migrant workers that were living near me, they left just recently. They gave me a bunch of food, and one of them was these nice sirloin steaks, and I don't have money for that stuff, so it's a nice treat. And I noticed on there it said no additives or anything, and it said grain-fed. I thought that was kind of interesting, grain-fed beef. And it reminds me of a story when I was younger. My mom told me something about out in Montana and Dakotas when she was out there, that they were all big on the Midwest beef because it had corn-fed, and she was like, well, no, you guys have it better because you have the grain beef. So it says here, Jobless Italian dies after setting himself on fire or self-immolating. Unemployed Italian has succumbed to injuries he suffered last week after setting himself on fire outside Parliament, in underscoring the growing joblessness in Europe. So he suffered 85% burns. Man, dude. At that point, 85%, you wish you could just punch out, But who knows, maybe they came there and fire extinguished him. To keep him alive so they can keep taxing him. That's what I love about the authorities, right? Because they don't give a shit about your health, but you can sit there and fire at the cops, and they will shoot you in the head, and then they'll try to revive you for the sole fact that you are a tax debt slave, and they want to maintain that. It sounds very cold, but that is the cold, hard truth. Binge-drinking college kids are happier, says a study. They're finding drinking is associated with social status. It says that drinking in college may be more motivated by social factors than by an actual desire to get smashed. So social status. Miami, Ohio University ranked in top 10 party schools in the United States. So this is at the same time where Social Security Administration is now docking people's Social Security benefits, like 50, 60-year-olds or 60-year-olds, whatever, because of college tuition payments that they haven't paid. So as this guy gives a Nazi salute, that's very, very interesting. But it's no big deal because it is a big business. I remember I was like having to think when I was like, 11 years old, 12 years old, I started to realize, okay, I got to start thinking what college I'm going to go to, what I'm going to do. And I just, it's so forced on you. Talk about social status. Everybody in my high school knew by the time they were sophomores, freshmen, where they're going to go. So where did I go? I went to the Marine Corps. Then I went to college. And then I realized that both were, I don't want to say a joke, you know what I mean? But, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And speaking of universities, you can't really defend yourself on most of them. University of Colorado to allow guns at off-campus housing. So they're going to allow students with concealed carry weapons permits to keep guns at some off-campus housing, but students cannot have them in their dormitories. So it's not going to really help then. We're on campus. When some individual lone gunman, quote, lone gunman, gets released out of the back door of the local psychiatrist's office, pumped full of drugs, and goes on a shooting rampage, you won't be able to defend yourself. You just have to sit there and be a statistic. But don't worry, the authorities will be there with all of the money that was spent and all the drills and all the preparations for a lone shooter. They're going to make sure that they're going to be there for you when you get shot in the back and the head, that they're going to be able to revive you so that you can keep paying your college tuition, and then you can go on to be a good tax slave in the job market. House bill would allow students to carry guns on campus. This is University of Kansas. Wants to take his Glock 19 to class, so it goes on here. And it says that Kansas is one of the 49 states to allow concealed carry of handguns, but it's still prohibited on college campuses. So the House is going to consider a bill which would allow concealed carry permit holders to take guns into government buildings unless they have metal detectors. And of course, Texas is considering the same thing. They've already, in the Senate, approved college concealed carry bill. So Deputies Women 87 scares off burglars with a 9mm gun. 2 burglars were scared off by an 87-year-old woman armed with a 9mm handgun Thursday morning, deputies said. This reminds me, again, when I was younger in my old neighborhood in South Chicago, which is mostly like Polish and Irish, those old ladies, you didn't fuck with them. They'd come out with a shotgun. But now this is all different. That generation, those old generations are gone. And God forbid if you are a good slave, a good tax slave, and you pay your taxes, and you have a gun to try to defend yourself in the wonderful, peaceful city of Chicago. Educators or re-educators or indoctrinators or brainwashers or programmers, whatever you want to call them. Educators say Friday they're going to start school year with an easier transition. Now, I only know about this because I looked around in my environment and noticed that all the school buses were going around, and I had a feeling, school's probably starting up again. Well, it did, and guess what day it started on? It started on Friday. And first thing I thought of was, why would they do that? Why would they start school on Friday? I'm like, that's the same thing that they do to people before they shit can them, right? So they don't go postal and start shooting everybody up or do anything rash or try to jump off the top of the building, because that's the end of them. Well, that's how they see it, and kill themselves, right? So this is what the schools are doing, is they train the next generation of tax slaves. They start school on Friday. Right? So they can go one day and be like, oh, that wasn't too bad. So entering his first year as principal and assistant principal for 4 years, this Mr. Moyer says, then they come back on Monday and they're ready to roll. So there you go. And driving in another area, this Northridge is basically near Amish towns and stuff like that. I couldn't help but notice that this thing looked like a prison. And then I realized, actually, that it was a high school. So go figure, right? It's actually a high school. It's got the nice Masonic triangles and that like that. But very, very creepy. I mean, the thing looked like a damn prison to me. But it's not the first time. I've seen other high schools, because they're real big on these mega schools. I've noticed wherever I go or wherever I see, I hear about these big schools that are being shut down for efficiency. Though they're not efficient. They're not efficient. You know what I mean? And they consolidate all these townships into these huge mega schools, and they look like prisons. And then when you have big mega schools, what do you need? Oh, you guessed it, security. You're going to need security. But also what? They had these. Northridge High School gives laptops to every student. So I noticed in looking at this that Northridge was given real high ratings, 8, 9 out of 10. It was a great school. Well, because they're cutting edge, because they're giving these people laptops to take home with little cameras. They're going to spy on them while they're at home, right? That's what they do. I mean, it's what they did in Pennsylvania. So palm scanning causing concern among Moss Bluff elementary schools. It says here a local elementary school is trying to implement a new program in their cafeteria, but it says here that the palm vein scanner is being met with much opposition from their parents. So the parents are basically what? The overseers, they're kind of the babysitters. Because if your children are owned by the state, then that would make you kind of the babysitters. So in South Park, you'd be like, rabble, 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 right? That's pretty much it. I was mad. I was very, very mad. Okay, we'll do something about it. So here we go. What's the reason for it? Oh, it's going to move the future tax slaves through the lunch line at a faster rate. It's going to improve efficiency. We are so large. We're such a big mega school. Make it more efficient, more accurate. See, but they said, they give them an option. See, they probably didn't tell them this right off the bat that they have an opt-out. But then when they made a big stink about it, don't. What do you make a big deal out of it? You can opt out, even though we didn't tell you about it. They're select motherfuckers, man. And the same day on Friday, when I realized the whole thing about send them back on Friday, I noticed this: someone holding their child on a leash. I couldn't believe it. It was like a harness or something like that. They actually sell them here, called gold bugs, a monkey child safety harness. This is what they think of us. And the mothers walk around with them. I swear to God, she was like tugging on it like it was a little dog. So they're not your children. They're your pets.